dark out there.
Right. I have a very teeny driver right behind me.
Oh.
Okay.
I better like, come on now.
Yeah.
I was looking short. I don't know. Okay. All right, we're a little behind schedule, so let's get, that's it. Let's do this. Move this microphone. All right.
Discussions of.
All right, just let me know when we're on and we'll get started. Okay, I don't have board book right now, so we're just gonna go. Okay, no, I got this one. All right, welcome back, everyone, or welcome, we're back. Are we on? Did I go? Are we on? We're good? Okay. All right, welcome everyone to this regular meeting of the Okemos Board of Education, held in public for the purpose of conducting the business of the school board. There are two opportunities for public comment tonight. Citizens who wish to address agenda or non-agenda items will have an opportunity at the beginning of the meeting, as well as near the end of the meeting. In-person individuals who wish to address the board must complete a blue form located with the agendas near the room entrance and presented to the board secretary prior to the start of the agenda item. Virtual participants must submit their name and address in a message through the chat box located in Zoom's meeting controls prior to the start of the agenda item. At the appropriate point in the agenda, the board president will call upon individuals who have submitted a blue card or a chat message, and that individual's microphone will be unmuted for their comments. Due to us returning from executive session, I will ask Secretary Phelps to recall the rolls since some of our board members were not here yet when we first convened.
Tom Buffett. Here. Katie Kavanaugh.
Here.
Shulan Dotsey.
Here.
Mary Jabara.
Here.
Melanie Lynn.
Here.
Jamie Taylor.
Here.
And I am here.
Okay, that means everyone is present. All right, first up tonight, we have a presentation from our MTSS committee. I'll turn it over to Assistant Superintendent Bailey to give that introduction.
Yeah, so we're excited to share with you some updates of where the district MTSS committee is. So we are in year two full years, 2.5. So we have Director Slee and Director Preco along with board committee members to share where the committee has been and where we're going.
I hope it works too. Yeah. So thank you. This will be quick. You've heard us talk about MTSS before. Yes, we have Director Preco and then Debbie Ferris, who is a multilingual teacher over at Bennett Woods, right? Yes. All right, so we're gonna do a quick review of our MTSS approach and then talk about our focus areas for this year. So MTSS, multi-tiered systems of support. Talking to you guys in case like you start to nod off. And Heather's gonna start. So this is just the different supports that we have for students that we try to put in place and be organized about it. Okay.
Great. All right, so why did we want to kind of do an MTSS reboot? And I think we've presented to the board about this a few times, but really it was to take a look at our systems. We are a high performing district and our data always looks good, but are we meeting the needs of all? No, and we know that. So we want to really, the focus of our work is really taking a look at our system and focusing on changing the system and not changing individuals. And then We will provide some of our goals are really to provide kind of clarity on our MTSS systems, our policies, practices, develop common language to be using. And of course, we want it to become very student-centered, system-dependent, not person-dependent. And we had a lot of really strong MTSS systems in place kind of prior to the pandemic. And we had a lot of staff turnover. And with that, we kind of lost some of our systems because they were with people, knew them versus kind of having them written down, having a good handbook and having it be more system-dependent. And we want it all to be easily replicated. I feel like I'm standing
Yeah.
right
Well,
where you're trying to
you are.
look.
Do you want me to talk about the?
I can talk about it.
Okay, Heather's gonna.
All right, so I think we talked about this in previous presentations too. A lot of times when you think of MTSS, you often see the triangle. It's more focused really only on intervention, and we really liked this diamond approach because it focuses not only on intervention, but also on enrichment and extension. So making sure we truly are meeting the needs of all of our students. And just remembering, you know, a student might be needing intervention in reading, but might need extension in math, or might need intervention in behavior, but extension in literacy. So students could fall anywhere on this diamond, and just really making sure, once again, we just thought this was a better approach and focusing on all of our students and their needs. Yes.
I know you're wondering, no, I did not draw this. It's clip art, but I could have. So we just wanted to, this is our, like, I guess, pre-assessment. We're gonna let you know what we're focusing on for the year. And Debbie's gonna talk a little bit about one of our goals. I'm gonna talk about the other one. And then later in the year, we're gonna have some other committee members come in and kind of do the post-assessment, tell you how we did, or you know, kind of where we've gotten in terms of the process. So just a reminder, last year we talked about the diamond. We had the committee look at our data and come up with goals, growth goals based on the NWEA scores in reading and math for grades K through 9. We'll be adding, have we added grade 10? Yes, grade 10. So we have lots of data to look at and see how students are growing in reading and math over time. Also, we looked at proficiency data. We looked at M-STEP scores, SAT and PSAT. We do not have a specific like SEL goal yet. And we've talked about that best screener that we do 3 times a year for the social emotional learning. That is something that we're diving into with a partnership with Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, as well as Ingham ISD and the Harvard Kennedy School's Government Performance Lab. So that'll be evolving over time as we dig deeper into that. We've also been, you know, pulling the teams together, trying to come up with common protocols, common approaches to things like looking at student needs and matching them up with interventions. The MTSS handbook coming soon, and our protocols for data meetings. So that's what we've done, and we're going to talk a little bit about kind of how we're moving forward this year. So we have 2 big goals, and they're big, they're huge. This first goal, oh, I forgot I had the clicker. Shouldn't give me, oh, this year. Yeah. Oh, yeah, these are the other folks who were supposed to be here, but you know, things got in the way. But Debbie is here and she'll talk in a second. The first goal that we're starting with the second goal, which Debbie's going to talk about. This one we're working on in bits and pieces. We realize the importance of communication, as in all things. It's critical in this MTSS work as well, so that we have a common language. We're making sure people understand the work, understand what we're doing. So we've been working on a kind of needs assessment. We've been building in ways that we're consistently communicating internally about MTSS, and we need to hopefully eventually by the end of the year we'll be looking at how we're sharing some of that work externally. And so that's going to evolve over time. But where we're really focusing our work is on our second goal, which Debbie, you're up.
Right.
Yeah, here you have the, you know. I have the clicker, you can have the microphone.
Okay, okay. Yes, well, thank you for having me here. I'm happy to be a part of this committee. So one of the things we were doing is talking about listing all of the instructional practices, supports, and instructional interventions that we have currently available. And then once we have those, talk about a way to analyze their effectiveness, some way to create a tool to help us understand better which ones are being effective and which ones maybe not so much. And then finally, to prioritize any changes that we might need to make in terms of stopping a particular intervention or amping it up or adjusting it for different populations as the case may be. And so I think I think we did this short-term goal.
In
It-
here.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
So-
Debbie and I were talking ahead of this meeting, and it was like, when we look at the list of all the interventions, it's like overwhelming, at least at the
Right.
elementary level. So a lot of this, I think of Harry Potter and the sorting hat, like we have to kind of throw it all in the hat and then sort things out.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just asked Debbie 2 questions, so she was going to respond to those. Basically, what's the best thing about being on this committee other than like all the fun we have, and kind of the impact on her work. So
Yes, so I answered these questions. I made a little note card. I felt like I was in high school again. I don't know why I don't know why I made a note card. It's kind of funny, but so working on this committee has impacted my work and how I see my role in the district as far as being able to provide interventions and supports to the ML students, but being aware of what other supports they may be getting and being really cognizant of what other supports they may need that are not being provided to. So this committee has allowed me to think about how the whole thing fits together instead of just my little ML little enclave. So I appreciate that opportunity. And then the best thing about having being on this committee is having the time to reflect on all the interventions, all the instructional practices, and to think about that, because I think we do have a lot, and it was kind of really enlightening when we went through the work of listing everything. So I think we have a daunting task ahead of us, but it's definitely something that's, that is really needed, and it will help us fill any of the gaps that exist currently and help us to prevent any, redundancies that are not needed. I mean, I think sometimes redundancies are crucial, but sometimes they're not. So being able to understand those things, I've enjoyed the opportunity to be able to contemplate that in my head as I'm doing that. So that's what I have.
thank you.
Thank you.
Ted Lasso there. And finally, not to toot our own horn, however, we did present, me, Heather, and Stacy. We presented, was it last week or 2 weeks ago at the statewide Michigan MTSS conference. And not that like, I don't, we put it out there, all of this work, we explained how amazing our teams are, but we also talked about a lot of the barriers that are in place. And it was a big room and we had like 150 people in there and lots of people were reaching out to us, thanking us for sharing our story honestly, asking us for our resources and wondering if they could come visit or pick our brains because they've been trying to do this work, but they've not yet seen a district jump in with this level of organization and commitment to the process. So I think it was affirming in the work, validating, and also nice to make some connections with folks who we can learn from as well as they're trying to figure it out the same way we're trying to figure it out. We did talk a lot about the work being messy, but I think it is. Your work is messy, our work is messy, but we definitely know we're heading in the right direction. And I don't know, did you want to add any? I mean, it was standing room only. And I'm like, people, you need to, like, really, there wasn't another session that sounded better than this, but no, it was nice to, and lots of good questions and really lots of good connections and just, it was very reassuring. And I think as we move forward with this work, we'll be inviting our committee members to help us share the story of what we're doing. So it's not just us, but we kicked it off. So.
And I can say that this presentation was the most attended of the conference.
Well, what do you
So,
know?
Let me
I
tell
mean-
you that you are within your gloating rights.
I mean, I'm not right. I just think the committee itself is doing really, really amazing work. And I think, you know, what Debbie had said is she's learning a lot, having the time to reflect on how we're doing things and kind of trying to become more efficient and better able to meet student needs. That's what it's about.
But educators from all over wanted to hear what you guys were doing. So
Right,
that's
yeah, no, I mean,
fantastic. Yeah.
I thought that was telling
It-
and
it's
just
great.
like, I thought there was one guy, I thought he was like actually gonna start crying because he was like, oh my gosh, we're a district just like you and like, we need to do this work. Can we come visit you? Can you come visit us? What, like, can we have your resources? So I think that'll be a good connection. And, you know, I think we learn as much from helping other districts as they learn from us.
Mhm. Great. Yes, Trustee Kavanaugh.
Well, first I'd like your autographs later.
I mean,
We can make that.
Yeah.
But I know we talk about this a lot, but for our community, can you maybe just give us some examples of some of the supports or interventions that we would see from both sides of your diamond? You know, like it's the kids who need enrichment or extension. What would be some examples, or kids that are gonna need some intervention? Is that putting you on the spot?
no. I'm like, what is happening? What is, everything's moving? You want to go back to
Were
the-
you clicking?
Okay.
So I can,
Okay, watch out.
yeah, unless I take myself out tripping on something, I can talk kind of on the intervention side. So I mean, that can be a variety of things from like kind of almost like a program kind of right out of the box, to, like I'll give Orton Gillingham, we've sent a lot of teachers to training for that. That, depending on how it is used, that can either be an instructional strategy or a methodology, which is kind of how we're using it in the district, because it's something that's being provided to all students, but you could take a small group and do more focused OG work, and then that would be considered an intervention. Some other interventions we have that are common for literacy would be like Lexia. As far as extensions, I'm not sure that I'm very well versed, I will be honest, because of the nature of my role, but Stacy might be able to, I know she's not part of this presentation, but she could talk more of
I'm
like,
sure you will,
I know there's individual plans for students, I can't think of what they're called, but
Yeah, so
I
when
go
we.
right to IEP, that's not what it's called.
So when we think about at the elementary ages, we see a lot of differentiation in the classrooms for this side. So that could be compacting the curriculum. It can be doing a pretest and then giving enrichment after that. When we get to the middle school and high school levels, we can see that in course advancement. So when students are in advanced math for their grade level, when they're taking in high school AP classes, those sorts of things for that. So it can be something as specific as a class. It can be something as general as differentiation within the classroom for that. And I think what we're finding as we're starting to list everything that is available, we're identifying where do we maybe have some holes when we think about this that we can be more consistent with so that all of our teachers really have a clear playbook of, if a student's demonstrating this, here's some really good strategies that are going to be impactful and we've already researched them and we know that these are going to be a good fit. So that's what we're hoping to accomplish with this. Several states, not yet Michigan, but several states have adopted this as their statewide MTSS framework. And so in researching prior to the committee starting what would be appropriate for our district, we found that this really opened up the conversation of that equity and that MTSS supports for all. And we found at the conference that a lot of other districts found that this was really meeting their needs of not just responding for intervention, but then also looking at other kids and how do we make sure that their needs, because we know a kid does not fit into like one point anywhere. They're very dynamic. And so we found that this was better addressing our needs.
Cause like I would be behaviorally, I would need tier 3 supports. Academically, I, need enrichment, of course. I'm kidding. But behaviorally, we also utilize, like in terms of interventions, like at a tier 2 level, we might have a group of students who are having trouble with anger. And so our counselor or social worker might have a small group of students do like 6 weeks of, meeting and learning some skill and building skills within that. And then they don't have to do it anymore. Check in, check out. On the enrichment side for behavior, I guess that's not as defined. And I think that's part of our process is that we'll start defining opportunities for, like if I think about safeties, that's kind of a enrichment, like you've proven that you're trustworthy enough for us to give you this job where you're taking care of younger kids. That to me would be on the enrichment and an extension piece of behavior. But I don't know if we really classify it as such right now, but that's as we're sort of inventorying our whole system, we'll start to build that in. So it's more explicit.
Trustee Lynn, you had your hand up.
I did. So thank you for the overview of this update. So can you provide some perspective in terms of, first of all, I expect that this work is iterative and incremental, but when do we feel like we will have substantial benefits being derived from this work in terms of impact to the students and the work of the committee? I'm sure the committee continues. We have that as a part of our system, but this targeted work, what does that look like over the next few years? Are we thinking that this is going to extend for 2 years? This targeted committee?
In my mind, just
Never done. I feel
Right.
like this work is never done because no one will ever be perfect, right? So. And I think that's what a sign of a good MTSS system is always having a district committee. Now, do we foresee it always needing to meet as often as we currently are?
That's
No,
what I'm asking.
but to try to project out when that will change, I think is really challenging. I look at the 2 things we're targeting this year and they're big goals. And I just think of the last meeting we were in, the work we thought we would get to, but it was just such heavy work and a lot of work to be done. So we're always adjusting and tweaking as we go.
So let me ask it a different way. How many big goals like this do we have? Or are these the 2 biggest goals and the rest of the things that we're looking at in terms of this focus work are just small things that we have to do? So that can be the work of the ongoing committee.
So I
guess that's
think-
what I'm like.
Yeah.
skating.
Have we talked about the practice profile before yeah, that's what I was like, we've had that. So we're using the practice profile, which is a way to that we are using it. It's from the Michigan Department of Ed, but we're using it as a way to kind of assess ourselves and measure our progress. And we do use the data from the practice profile to determine our goals. So I think as we assess ourselves every year, that's where, because there are targets within that, that's kind of how we determine our next steps. And I don't have the data in front of me to remember where we were at the end, but we feel like, were we like, I don't remember our score at all where we were at the last, we made good growth last year. We were very, because when we were in the work, it wasn't, I think, wasn't feeling like we were, because we all want to kind of move fast, right? We want to get all this done now and make all these great changes. And I feel like we were maybe 20% or something like that on the practice profile. Maybe, I don't know if I'm remembering the numbers wrong, but I feel like it was in the 20% and then got to 43% or somewhere around there.
And the level of this work is so in-depth that this might be a
Yeah.
topic that the board might want to do as a work session as we think about doing that in the next year, because there's a lot of pieces that we could go into.
Mhm.
And so I know that we would be happy to go more in depth on that in a future work session, if that would be the will of the board.
Yeah.
Everyone's nodding their heads.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
I just would like to add to that. I think your question, even just asking the impact, there's the impact on the system of adults running these programs. And I think there's also, we're concerned about the impact on our students, and then specifically on our students who have opportunity gaps. I view this at like, we're laying the foundation to be able to do that in a more intentional way than we have done in the past. So starting here feels slow and muddy right now, but as we start to kind of piece everything together, I think we'll be able to better show that impact. I mean, we have the process data of us creating all these things, and that's easy to show you. I think we'll have some data pieces from some of the student-centered pieces that we can correlate. Hopefully this year, if not this year, I would imagine next year.
Thank you.
Trustee Taylor?
So, thank you. And I have a comment and then I have a question. Well, they're both kind of comments. You answered one of my question that I was going to ask. You actually, I think, answered it when you were talking about the presentation that you gave. Because my question was going to be, are other districts rolling up their sleeves, and how common are these committees and this work across the state? And is this an opportunity? You know, Okemos is known for its excellence, and I think of things like this as proof of that excellence. And when you were describing the presentation that you gave, that tells me that we really are as a district, and you really are doing some really great work that's going to benefit our students, but that's also recognized, and we can also help other people, and we can be leaders in that way. And I love that. You didn't even know I was going to ask the question, and you had it in your presentation.
And I will say, in my previous life as a Ingham ISD coach and consultant, my role was systems and MTSS. And I worked all throughout the county. It's in pockets. I haven't seen another district doing it in the manner that we're approaching it, from a pre-K to 12. Focus. It's sort of here and there, especially when we talk about the behavior components of MTSS.
And then I'm also tying this back to our NWEA, because I would imagine we're going to really see the fruits of this work in our NWEA growth. And the goal of this is for our students to grow wherever they are. And it lines up pretty nicely with our implementation of NWEA too. So in my mind, those two things are really going together very nicely.
Yes.
Which is, to Trustee Lynn's point, I think that's going to be one of our data points, that we're really going to start to see the implementation of this work.
Yes.
That
Yes,
is our
thank
hope.
you.
That is our
Trustee
hope.
Doxey.
Yes, similar to what trustee Taylor said, kudos to the team for presenting at the national conference. I know we've talked about telling our story and you all are out there doing that, so thank you. One question on the second goal, in developing the tool to, the evaluation tool to look at the practices and interventions and supports, does that include, I didn't see any reference to looking at if it's evidence and research based. I know, Director Sleeve mentioned, like, you gotta put it all in, pull it all together to see what we have, right? But when we get to the point of, evaluating
Yeah.
what we have, is that included? Maybe it's inherent, but when I see this list and I don't see that listed, that's why I'm asking the question.
Yes, we were using the hexagon tool to take a look at our interventions and start evaluating them in that way.
So that
And
includes,
it does
It's,
include
yeah,
okay,
on it.
thank you.
That specifically asks a bunch of questions and
Mhm.
that's definitely one of the top criteria that we want to
Okay.
be
Thank you.
cognizant of.
Anyone else? Okay, well, thank you so much. We look forward to hearing from you again.
Thank you.
Up next, we have a discussion move forward regarding a furniture purchase at Kinawa. Assistant
Go ahead.
Superintendent Bailey.
Oh.
Okay, so I am here to talk to you more about furniture. So the last few times I've been up here talking about furniture, it's been finishing our 2019 bond. And so you might remember we had some media center furniture, we had some different spaces furniture, but now we're going to get into what was our process because we're into the 2022 bond. So I wanted to kind of talk about the process that we used to start selecting a vendor. So knowing that this is going to be all encompassing for a large amount of our bond, we went through a process. So it was myself, Jody Noble, Steve Sturley, principals at Kenowa and Chippewa, and our past operations director, that we worked with Tower Pinkster, and we went on tours of 3 different manufacturers and dealers. You may all be well versed in this, but I was not in the furniture realm. So as you think about a manufacturer like for cars, Ford, then you have to go to a dealership who is authorized to then sell Ford. So furniture is similar. So furniture, you have different manufacturers and then they have only specific dealers that they work with. So it's this idea of getting a good match for the furniture you want and the dealer, because the dealer is actually who you're going to be working with for the duration of the period of time. So thinking about some things that we considered were the durability of the furniture, the financial pieces of that as well. But in regards to the dealer, who's somebody that's going to, we talked with other people that they had worked with, who's somebody who has high recommendations regarding communication and customer service and ability to connect with us and make sure that our needs are being met. So it was a definitely more complicated process than I think we anticipated going into that. But with all of that, what we selected was VS Furniture with Great Lakes as the dealer for our student furniture selection, and Hayworth with the manufacturer, and DBI for the dealer for our administrative furniture. So that was the first step that we took in the process. And we knew that VS has a cooperating purchasing agreement through Omnia Partners, and so we could participate in. So as part of the financials that we connected with for these dealers, they participate in different programs through the state of Michigan that we would be authorized to get the best rates in. So they're all, when you think about going through the bid process, they were all on that, like approved already in a consortium through the state of Michigan. So we focused, once we had that, here was our strategy. So we knew that we had 3 big rocks. We have 3 new buildings. We have Kenowa, we have Chippewa, and we have Cornell. So we knew that we wanted to make sure that we were meeting those furniture needs in those. Then we had Bennett Woods, Central Montessori, and Hiawatha. The reason that those were the next ones is because if we had Cornell getting new furniture, we wanted to have as much consistency along all of the elementaries as possible. So that's why it went into the second priority, and then third priority was the high school. So the strategy that I'm going to be talking about tonight is our Kennewa classroom furniture purchase. Once we knew the priority of that, we went through and Executive Director Lentz, as well as our partners, looked through the escalating cost of furniture to see how could it be possible that we could start making some of these purchases now when we can have a better value? And most importantly, have students start using that furniture now and not waiting for the future. So what I'm going to be presenting to you tonight is the proposal for Kennewa student furniture that would be purchased in the summer of next year and implemented into the school year. We know that we have many years that they're going to be in that building before they move into a new facility, so they'll be able to participate in that. Then we have the new Chippewa, the fall of 26, when that would be moving into that new building. We don't know yet about Cornell because we have to look at some different factors of if we would have the capacity to do both Cornell and Chippewa at the same summer at the same time. So we don't know if it's not that, then it would be 28 when they're moving into their new building. And then following would be other furniture needs. The other furniture needs for Kennewa would be the furniture that wouldn't fit in the current spaces. So I'll give you an example. Our science classrooms are going to look different than what they do right now in Kennewa. So the furniture that we're going to have for our science classrooms wouldn't fit in the current layout floor plan. So some of those specialty rooms would be waiting until we have the new spaces for them to move into. And then to be determined would be the additional classroom furniture for those 3 other elementaries, as well as determining that need at the high school. So once we did that, we started piloting the furniture. So we had furniture piloted at Kennewa, Cornell, and Chippewa by different teachers, and we wanted it to inform our overall purchases. So getting from the teachers, what did you like? The students, what did you like? What did you not like? What would you want more of? So thinking about what type of furniture do we want as we're thinking about creating spaces for now and spaces for the future. So I'll give you an example. Right now, some of our furniture is in a corner of the classroom because we're hardwired in. So we think in our brain, we have a teacher's corner. We can all see that in a classroom, a teacher's corner. I would argue potentially 5, 10, 15 years from now, we're not going to be hardwired in. What does that space look like? How do we create a space that benefits now, but is also allowing us as a district to be flexible and agile as we move to the needs of the future, which none of us can necessarily predict what they're going to be. So we had pilot teachers in these 3 buildings, and they were provided with professional learning opportunities on the furniture pieces before they piloted them in the classroom to think about if you have these flexible spaces, how would you do instruction and learning differently? So starting from last year, we had the pilot classrooms. They got the training in December. We had the integration with flexible furniture when we came back in January. More of the implementation phase, ongoing feedback collection. I would say that our manufacturer and our dealer were so responsive with this. The manufacturer was meeting with our teachers on Zoom calls and saying, what did you like? What do you not like? How is it working for your 3rd grade class? What could be better? Would you like to try out that piece? I can send it to you right now. So it was a very ongoing back and forth 2-way interaction to make sure that that implementation phase was as beneficial as it could be to making our future decision. And then towards the end of the year, we had final adjustments. And I was even just this past month on calls with the manufacturer and some of our pilot teachers. So I want to give huge kudos to these pilot teachers. From Cornell, we had a kindergarten and 3rd grade teacher. At Kennewa, we had a Montessori classroom teacher and then a 6th grade math teacher. At Chippewa, we had both the math and science and language arts to think about those different content areas as well. And our principals worked with these teams to make sure that this was a helpful process. So when we think about our teachers and their commitment to our students, this is one more thing, and they did it amazingly in providing their feedback and taking the calls so we could really use that in making future decisions. So once we had the feedback, we went through to determine what we would want, and we wanted to make sure that we were developing a standard program. So we didn't want each classroom space to look radically different from the others. So when we're thinking about middle school, that might look like math classrooms are going to have these similar layouts. Our science classrooms would have these similar layouts, and making sure that those content teachers had input on those as well. Okay, so here's some of the fun. Here's our tables and surfaces. This is a little awkward. So when we think about what we're looking like, we want to make sure that we have pieces that can serve as individual desks. So if we need to, we could separate them, but then they can also come together in different shapes and different opportunities for partner work, group work, what that needs to look like. We can have some soft seating. So the red over there is some soft seating in those areas. Here's just another view of what it looks like. The chairs that we have are specialty. They're designed specific with these desks. So you can pick them up and put them not on top of a desk where it's going to fall over, but kind of right launched in the middle of it, if you will. It hooks on like this, the bottom of that. Why is that important? Because it can expedite the cleaning process. So as we were going through these and thinking about what surfaces, how can we create spaces that we can support our cleaning staff so that they can be more efficient in doing their job as well? So trying to find multiple win-wins. We also looked at storage. So for storage, we wanted to make sure that we had something that was usable for the teacher. So what we know is in Kenowa, we have students that have some homeroom teachers and they go from class to class. And so what do they need to store in their classroom and how can we make it accessible for them? And this is where teacher feedback was so essential. From it's not helpful if it only pulls out from one direction because I can't have 28 kids going to one spot in the classroom. It's taking me 5 minutes of transitional time. We need it on both sides. Or we need to, as you can see here, have it for different pods. So each pod has access to the materials. And making sure that those were all mobile so they could move as needed. Okay, whoops. So here's just some of the feedback from our teachers in thinking about this. So what they talked about is really that increase of collaboration, the increased ability for them to communicate both with students as well as students with teachers, where the teacher can just come alongside them and work with them as needed. The variety, so when we talk about different seats, having chairs, having the hooky stools. These are the stools that kind of you sit on them and you can move all over. Very, very popular for pretty much every age. It just gives a lot of that movement while they're thinking or listening. And then making sure that it supports a multitude of things. So from a lecture style to a project, that we have easy to move furniture for students and teachers. And then here's just some student feedback that you can talk about. I think one of the biggest pieces of this process was making sure that we were inclusive of student feedback. They are sitting in chairs all day long. And I don't know about any of you, but when I go to a conference and I'm sitting the whole day, the first thing I think about is, this is our student experience. Is this what we want the student experience to be? How can we provide more opportunities for variety and movement during the day? We have students here, so maybe they would agree with that. Yes, movement. We can just talk about some of these for the students, our middle school students, making sure that it's more comfortable for them as well. So here's some pictures. So these are pictures from our building, our students, and what this looks like. So these are the furniture pieces. So from the manufacturer, obviously, we then go through to narrow down what are going to be the pieces. So these were the pieces that were selected based on the feedback. This is the jumper chair that has the movement, or like I said, that's the one that's stationary that can just go on the desk. the stools that I mentioned, they're easy to move around, 100% recyclable plastic. The shift collection, which is this group of how the tables are set up. And the soft seating, the rondo lift, so having some of those available so that they can be moving up and down so students can stand. They can also tilt it to the side if they want to do some whiteboard work on there, share out their answers. So again, not a whole classroom of these, but adding in some different versatile pieces. The Tano, which is the trapezoid, which you can put into different shapes and is stackable as well. Some of the space storage, so thinking about, how big of a bin do you need? What are you storing there? And how accessible is it for students to get to? And what are we going to do with all of our used furniture? So as exciting as it is when we get new furniture, we have to think about where are we putting the old things? So we have worked with the dealer that we worked with. One of the reasons that we wanted to go with them is that they partner with somebody that works through this process as well. So this is included in the whole logistics piece of taking it out and putting it in. And so let me get to my notes because I know we have them in here. There it is, Reuse Network. It's the largest manufacturer of surplus assets for reuse in the US. And the reused furniture goes to communities in need, impoverished communities, war, or natural disasters. So part of the purchase of this was including that as well so that we can make sure that we're being good citizens on the other side of things and making sure that it's getting that second life out of it as well. So that's part of that process as well. So these would be the next steps from this. This is going to come forward as an action item at the December meeting. And that would be for Kenwa classroom furniture to not exceed $1.9 million. The plan then would be, if approved, to have a spring 2025 professional learning, a move in, move out. So as part of the work with this dealer, VS Furniture, they really want to make sure that you don't just get the furniture, you need to do professional learning, thinking about how we're going to reuse the space before that happens. So working with them to have some of those days and then having some fall 2025 professional learning as well, once it's in the classroom and being implemented. Our current bond that we're in has a total of $10.4 million for furniture. So as we think about where this falls in the grand scheme of things. And another side note, our prior furniture purchases from the 2019 bond were approximately $2 million. And that included lunch tables, flexible furniture for media centers and other furniture needs. So just kind of in the overall scheme. The furniture that was purchased in the 2019 bond was intentional and will all be continuing to use. So we picked spaces that we knew the furniture would continue moving forward with us. So it's all part of that greater scheme of where we're going as a district.
Thank you. Any questions? Yes, trustee Buffett.
I just want to thank you. It's just a thoughtful process from the beginning to engaging staff and students and evaluating it to really thinking about PD also. So it's, thank you. You're thinking about so many different aspects of what's involved in getting this furniture to our district.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We'll look forward to that at the next meeting. Up next, we have a special education funding presentation. We'll hear from Director Preco and Executive Director Lentz.
Good evening. This is a follow-up conversation, presentation from when we shared on May 13th. We did an update to the board about special education funding and that there were some changes that would be impacting us through Ingham ISD and that impact us. So I want to give an update as to where we are with that. So provide a little background. Talk about a couple phases that we're going through, the impact to Okemos and some things that still are not yet known, but that could definitely continue to impact us going forward. So in terms of background, special ed funding is funded from three main areas. We receive federal funds, state funds, and local funds. And what we're talking about tonight is the local funds, and that is your property taxes. Every ISD in the state of Michigan has levies a property tax levy. The revenue, though, varies because it is not the same property tax levy from county to county to county. So it depends on what are you levying and what is your property tax base. In terms of what is being levied, Ingham ISD is the third highest levy in the state of Michigan at about 4.7 mils. We're in the top 10 of the revenue collected in terms of your property tax base. With those 4.7 mils, I can't remember where they stand, but it's in the top 10. So they levy about $52 million out of a total of $99 million, which is about 53%. And there is a formula. So we are required every 3 years? Every 3 years, the ISD special ed plan, and it's a plan that is what services, how are we providing special education services in our county, has to be updated with the Department of Ed. And part of that plan is we have to state, how are you allocating these funds with out to your local district? So in every county can be different. So it's a county decision. So in terms of, okay, so there's these funds and how are they being levied? So what has the ISD done in the past and what are they doing now to come up with that formula or how that's going to be done? And so what was developed back in the late 90s was called the Special Education Funding Committee. And the superintendents meet and they call it the roundtable. So the county superintendents establish this cross-functional group of individuals from one representative from every district of the 12 districts in the county, made up evenly of superintendents, special ed directors, and finance directors. And so there were very clear processes, and we were there to review the funding system, review issues that maybe come up in the funding system. So you would meet periodically to talk those through. And it was from what was brought forward to the funding committee to be reviewed to what the funding committee could decide on, what had to be decided by roundtable, and who was able to vote. All of that was very, very clear for 20 years or so. And then in the last few years, that really hasn't functioned the way it used to function. And Heather's been a part of those groups. I was been a part of it from my previous job, but Heather has been on it from the special ed director side of things and has seen how that has evolved over the last few years. The funding formula, the base funding formula had a few components. Number of special ed students. The general ed FTE was a factor in the formula. So your total general ed FTE, and then an enhancement for small districts for various reasons. What we're really focusing on in this conversation for this phase 1 is the general ed FTE. Just to remind you, or to point out, this is a pot of money. It's a formula to divvy up a pot of money. So anytime you make tweaks to that pot of money, you're going to have winners and losers. Someone's going to benefit, someone's not. But what that cross-functional group was there to do is to review, why do we want to do it? What is the impact? Does it make sense? What is the impact then lastly, we look at financial pieces of it and how do we manage all of that? The Okemos receives in this pot of money about $5.9 million, which is about half of our special education expenditures. The next highest portion that is of revenue that we receive is state aid, which is about $4 million. So we get the majority of our money from state and local sources. How are those funds used? And Director Preco can talk about this if there's more questions, but just very generally, it's from our special ed programs that we provide from teachers and paraprofessionals. We provide services such as speech, social work, physical therapy, those types of services. We have specialized transportation. If a student is unable to ride the general ed bus with their peers, or specialized transportation. And there's materials that may be needed, specialized instructional materials that may be needed. Did I miss anything?
No.
Nope, okay. So phase one of the plan was what we went into in the 23-24 year, the group met with. And it really spawned from a lawsuit in Genesee County that one of the school districts filed, and they filed it because of the percent of the funding that was divvied up based on your K-12 allocation. The rationale being that this is special ed funding. Why is very high percent, about 90% of the funding being distributed based on K-12 counts? So there was a lawsuit filed, and the state superintendent, Dr. Michael Rice, actually had to come down to an opinion on that. And he dictated what their new formula was going to be. And obviously there's a lot that led up to that, and basically said, this will be your new formula. However, we value local decision-making. So if the county wants to get together and come up with another formula, you can go ahead and do that. But until that happens, this is your formula. So it really spawned into that. What percent are we using general ed FTE in our formula in Ingham County? And so that was the primary focus of that meeting, was we have to look at that and we have to deal with that. Because there were communications saying, you know, about 30% was being used. That's probably too high. So we all agreed with that theory and concept, but the process that we went through, there were frustrations within the process. There was concern that maybe not all members on the funding committee understood what the funding system was. There hadn't been clear training to new individuals within our county for 8 years. People haven't been trained, so they didn't understand the current system that was in place. There were philosophical disagreements about the factors being utilized. There were parallels being drawn from our county to another county. There was perceived lack of transparency. So you can see there was a lot of frustrations in this process. And then there was also threatening of lawsuits being filed. So what ended up happening was, back up real quick. There was a couple of scenarios that we were asked, the funding committee was said, if you had to choose from one of these, what would you choose? And so we had to go around and take a vote, and it was very clear there was one system that we preferred system. Wasn't 100% vote, but it was 80-20, 85-15%, something in that nature. So it's pretty high. So then that decision was brought to Roundtable. Roundtable met, and there was a lot of conversation and there was not a lot of agreement, and it was a 50-50 vote at best. And 2 districts decided, I'm not going to vote. This has not been a good process, and we are going to abstain from voting from this. However, Superintendent Mellemaw brought forward to their board for action on the decision that was not supported by the funding committee, that was not supported by Roundtable. He brought that forward to the board. It was his recommendation, and their board adopted it. It's submitted to the ISD and submitted that to MDE, and it was just recently approved. So now we go to phase 2 of the special ed funding system. So there were 2 phases, and they knew this. They said, phase 1, we want to look at general ed FTE. Phase 2, we want to, and again, this is not the local district saying we need to look at all these. This was the ISD saying we want to look at all these. So phase 2, they said, we're going to operate differently. Phase 1 didn't go well in terms of process. So we're just going to get all superintendents, special ed directors, and finance directors in a room together on one day, and we'll hash this out. So it was the whole funding system they wanted to look at. We were asked to, but the ISC proposed some concepts, and we were asked to provide feedback on the concepts. No financials were discussed. We talked about it as some roundtables with some other districts, and then we broke off with our like counterparts, Heather with her other special ed directors, me with finance directors, et cetera. Districts, the feedback I have, that I have written down was that this is more complicated. It doesn't make sense. Again, philosophical disagreements amongst some portions of the funding system. One component of the system isn't consistently captured between districts because it's not used at the state of Michigan. They use a total expenditure. They don't break it down. They don't rely on this individual line item on a cost report, on a 50-line cost report. So it's not captured accurately. There's concern that if the ISD runs a program in a local district, like they might run an ASD program in East Lansing, Weberville, that because they might, because there maybe are multiple districts sending students to that one program, so the ISD, they're housed out in a local. There's concern that if they run the program, there's more funding attributed that to than if we were to run our own program in our own district that we do. So there are concerns. The ISD took some of that information back in October 21st. They shared a couple options with some tweaks and shared some numbers and said, okay, here it is. Here's a couple options for you. Roundtable's going to vote on it in 2 days. So there was no more conversation. At roundtable on the 23rd, and the plan was to go to the board in November, ISD board action in December. October roundtable did not go well. There was a lot of frustration. Superintendents were unhappy. And so eventually they said, okay, we can't move forward. We will delay it for 1 month and push everything back. And Assistant Superintendent Bailey got to enjoy attending and being brought into this process. And could you summarize? It was a frustrating process, I believe you said.
Yes, it was very frustrating, I think for a lot of people involved with that, again, regarding process and feeling like what happened in September wasn't reflected in October, and now we have these multiple different things, and really seeking that philosophical why. Why are we doing this? What does this look like? A lot of different competing, coming into it, you would have thought it was the beginning of the process, not a voting day. There were still a lot of wonderings up in the air.
And so the reason we go through that and make you aware of the process is because, is because of the impact, the financial impact to Okemos. The financial impact for us for that phase 1 is $470,000. And these check marks means when does that impact us? We are not impacted in 24-25. That phase 1 is impacted starting next school year, and that continues each year. Phase 2 impact is an additional $700,000 to Okemos Public Schools. And they will delay that for 1 year beyond when phase 1 is implemented. So this is a total impact of, so 5.9 million that we received. This is about a 20% decrease in our funding, our local funding for this. Typically, when these have been discussed before and there have been large changes, there have been transition period where we're not going to implement this fully for a while because it's going to take districts a while to realize this and make adjustments where they need to make adjustments. But we don't know if there will be a transition adjustment. That has not been discussed. That has been left off any conversations. And what is still not known? We have Beekman Center, the ISD. It took over Beekman Center starting this school year. It was operated by Lansing. It's similar to the Heartwood program. That building is a very old building, aging in facility, aging infrastructure is a nice way to say it. It is very old and it needs attention. But there's not a finalized plan for how they're going to fund those improvements. ISD fund balance. The ISD right now, the ISD, unlike us, unlike a local district, the ISD has a general fund which is separate from their special education fund, which is separate from their career and tech ed fund. So if we look at their special ed fund, the majority of those funds goes back to local districts. The majority of that 99 million goes out to locals. It's a unique situation. You don't have the same pressure of needing a large fund balance because if you have to add staff or if you have less students, it's all tied into because the districts have less students. It's not that they're tied in, they don't have the same year-to-year operational pressures because the majority of the money is the local district's monies. Currently, it's a very small fund balance. However, the ISD wants to grow it up to 12 to a 15% fund balance, which would be about $6 million. And we have been asked, we've asked why, what's your rationale? Because we don't disagree with having it higher, but every dollar that is put in the ISD fund balance is taking money out of school districts, out of the local school districts. And so we want to ensure that if that's happening, we need clear understanding of the why. And right now, you know, we know they don't have they're saying we don't have unexpected facility needs. We don't have a way to fund that. You know, let's say the playground at Hartwood is bad and we need to replace pieces. We don't have anything anywhere to draw those funds from. If you do recall, the ISD did have a millage, a Headley restoration millage back in March of 2020. That Headley restoration millage generated an additional $2.3 million to the county, and the ISD is taking half of that out of their special ed fund and putting it into a capital projects funds for future needs. So they are doing that on an annual basis, but they're saying for more expensive items, they don't have a fund balance. Again, that has not been talked about. There is not a plan on how they're going to obtain that. And how we should message that. And again, the reason for tonight, have I missed any?
She does great. Yeah.
She's
the money person. I just let her.
I know enough about programming to be a little dangerous.
Yeah, and I can answer those questions.
Yeah. But we wanted to bring it forward to you tonight because there is concern. This is going to the ISD. It's our understanding, and it is the intent that it's going to the ISD board in December with their action in January. And there is not, there's a lot of concern and frustrations, not just with Okemos, but across the county in this plan. And we want you to be aware because this will be impacting next year's budget and every year after's budget.
So tell us how we can help.
You know, I think there's maybe the ISD board or the ISD superintendent, maybe he might be able to, you know, maybe they could explain more, answer some questions, talk about process, how we can move forward with something when there's such concern across multiple districts. Unfortunately, not unfortunately, but legislation only requires the local district board to take action on the general ed budget of the ISD. So every April, when you agree to adopt their budget, or you take action on approving or not approving it, it's only the general ed portion. So really our recourse is we can file complaints, special ed complaints. We've pushed, we're the squeaky wheels.
We are the squeaky wheels.
So we've done a lot of pushing on our end, and I'm not sure what more we can do on our end for this.
Questions? Trustee Taylor.
So my question is more maybe for my fellow trustees. Because we've had our representation from our administrators involved in this process or lack thereof this entire time. So where is there an opportunity for us as a board to get involved with our fellow ISD boards, with East Lansing and Williamston and like how, there's strength in numbers. I don't really mean it that way, but I kind of do. Because this was forecasted for us in May. So, we shouldn't be surprised that here, it didn't sound like it was gonna work itself out. And so I don't know how, as one board, like, do we invite Jason to a meeting and we ask him questions? I mean, sure, that's one approach and he can answer the questions, but I guess I don't know, as an Okemos Board of Education, do we engage with other boards to see where they're, even take their temperature? I don't know, just spitballing here.
Well, has it come up at ISOA?
What's that?
No, it hasn't been.
Oh.
And we-
You are the representative.
Well, I was, and
Oh,
maybe
and
before.
I attempted when we got some grumblings of this in May. I mean, obviously it was more than grumblings because we talked about it at the May meeting. I tried to bring it up. I tried to make it a discussion, and it was kind of talked around. The mumbo jumbo. Oh, we're still in the process, and so I think I brought it up a little too early on in the process, that it was easy to kind of skirt around the questions I was asking, because I was asking some kind of broad questions, just to kind of see what was going to happen and how the questions were going to be answered, and they really weren't answered, so. Trustee Lynn.
So I just want to make sure, I have two questions that I'm reading this table for impact to Okemos correctly. So in 26 and 27, 26, 27 school year, we're expecting about $1 million impact. So it's the 700 plus the 400. Okay, I just
And
wanted.
all the years forward.
Yes, and this is compounding, right? Right, okay. So are we the only, I mean, to your point, trustee Taylor, are we the only district who is having this significant impact? I call this a significant impact
It is.
to general fund. I mean,
It
this is
significant.
not something we expected, or I wouldn't have expected. So what do our neighbors, like, who would our neighbors be who are as impacted? I don't know what that looks like. So
I do have the information. I don't have it in front of me tonight, but I'm happy to share that with Assistant Superintendent Bailey, and she can send that out. But I do have that.
So generally, are we the only ones? I mean, are we unique in this magnitude of impact? I guess I don't need this district's name and this district's name, but are there 2 out of the 8 or 10 districts, or is it 1 out? I mean, what is the order of magnitude of this?
I would say we were one of the highest impacted districts
Okay.
in a negative manner, in terms of the loss. But when we talk about money, I know one district that we're close with, in terms of bouncing ideas off each other and things like that. They're not impacted to a large degree, but they're very unhappy with the process, and they don't want to move forward because philosophical differences in what is being used in this calculation, and they don't make sense. They don't make sense, and they're philosophically opposed to the formulas. So even when we just talk about the dollar impacted, and I know that's how to get up people's attention is with the dollar impact, but districts that really aren't impacted to the greater extent are not happy with it either.
Trustee Kevin.
Well, can you just tell me, so we currently get 5.9 million?
Correct.
And we are going down to 1.1?
We're going down by 1.1.
Down by 1.1.
Yes, yes. And I'd like to stress, our services to special needs children will not change. There are mandates, laws, things of that. Our services are not going to change. What happens is whatever is not funded from dedicated special ed funding sources ends up coming just from your general pot of money. So it's just less dollars across, so services to special needs students will not change.
So,
Will we have other services impacted?
Yeah.
Potentially,
so about 1.1 million will
Yes.
come out of our general funds every year.
yes.
The general.
But we still
population,
will be providing the special ed teachers, the special education parapros. They still have to get to school, you know, the students still have to get to school. None of those, because they're dictated by the IEPs, will be changing.
Go ahead.
Another question I have, and maybe it's not one that can be answered here today, but to better understand maybe in more broader terms, what those actual philosophical differences are, because right now it is just a number. And I know that it might be too complicated to just like lay out the formula for us. That's probably too into the weeds, but having a better idea on exactly what does philosophical differences mean? Like, what are the components that don't make any sense? If we could maybe bring it to that, I think it would help me better understand what is that number actually, how did we get there? Because right now it's just this nebulous philosophical differences and I don't really know what that means, right? So if there's a way to kind of
Yeah.
bring that down a little.
Trustee Phelps was next.
Oh, I guess this would help me understand this whole funding thing. So I see this millage is 4.7384 mils in all of Bingham County, and we collect 5.9 of that, of the total. Do you know roughly, based on our taxable value, what portion of that millage Okemos is paying?
I do not. I do know by law, you cannot base any part of your funding formula.
I'm not suggesting that.
yeah.
It just helps me for.
Yeah, I don't have that off the, I mean, I can get that. I don't have it off the top of my head.
Thank you.
Trustee Buffett.
Actually, the story is helpful in providing the context of how we got to this place right now. I did have one clarifying question about that. You were telling the story about the in phase one, about the steering committee coming together, and at some point your choices were narrowed to 2. So who had the authority to narrow it to 2?
The IC narrowed it down. They listened to feedback at a few meetings and they brought us choices and we had to react to the choices and they said,
So that
if you have to vote from 2, if you have to vote from this one or this one, which one would you choose? Now, did we want to choose one of those? I think the group would have come up with a different formula.
so that's a moment.
But if we could live, if you had to live with one, what would you choose?
But that's a moment in the journey that kind of illustrates the
Yeah.
frustration, which had previously been a
Mhm.
pretty collaborative process. So I
Yes.
understand.
Yes, years past.
Yeah.
Was very collaborative process.
And then this is going to vote in December, or it's being presented in December, voting in January?
Yes.
So our emails, feedback, suggestions, questions, et cetera, need to be sent to the ISC board / superintendent before that December meeting?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I have another question.
Mhm.
It literally just flew out of my brain. I'm really bothered by this, so I'm a little flustered. This is very upsetting. It had to do with the, I'll email it if I think of it. It flew out of my
Absolutely,
brain.
yeah.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. Anybody else have any questions? Okay. Thank you so much. We appreciate your explanation because we wouldn't know if you didn't tell us, so.
Right.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Up next, we have our citizens' opportunity to address the board. At this time, any items of interest that may or may not be a part of the evening's agenda can be presented. Citizens are required to limit comments to 3 minutes, except when this requirement is waived by the board president during the meeting. A timekeeper will communicate to the individual who is addressing the board at 3 minutes. The board highly values public comment and input. However, the board meeting format is designed to facilitate the evening's agenda and therefore restricts board members from engaging in conversation with speakers or immediately responding to questions. Questions and concerns may be addressed by the board later in the agenda and may be assigned for follow-up by the board or superintendent at a later date. Do we have any blue cards?
We do not.
Do we have any online speakers? No, we do not. Okay. I was talking as fast as I could to get to you guys. Now, we will hear from our high school students with their reports and any requests they might have. If you guys would like to introduce yourselves, we're happy to have you.
Hello, I'm Penelope Joy,
I'm Xavier Rogers.
and this is my first board meeting of the year. I haven't been here in a long time, so thank you very much for having me back, being able to represent the school. Very excited for this year. Our school has been going through a tough time, in quite a tough time with the recent deaths of Auden Robinson and Steve Finnemore. Auden, as you know, was a junior to our school, and Steve Finnemore was a substitute at our school and a youth basketball coach and someone who was able to impact every student. And I think we're all very much in need of Thanksgiving break starting Wednesday. These events have been very heartbreaking, but the school has responded in a very positive way that we're very thankful for. So we've been given flexibility with attendance and counselor appointments, additional support from our wolf pack coming from all the other schools, options for support groups, and mandatory checking Google Forms to make sure that every student is taken care of in whatever way they may need. Students have put kindness notes all around the school and decorated Auden's locker, and the Hazlitt Student Council has also sent a large banner of support for our school, which Student Council received this week. We have to find a place for it, but we're very thankful to them as well to get support from the community and communities surrounding as well. Though many students and teachers have been struggling, the support that we're giving each other at school, I think, is very important, and we're very grateful for it. A couple updates about working the community. So the NHS food drive was able to raise $3,946 for the Okemos Food Bank. So we're very grateful to the community for participation and for all your donations. Lahari Raja has also continued her Crunch the Hunger food drive and gathered a quarter of a ton of food for the Greater Lansing Food Bank. And so as you can see, our students are making lots of contributions to the community coming up on the holidays.
And the administration put in a new expectation for students when they leave class. You're now expected to sign in and sign out for like using the bathroom, going to your locker or anything. And additionally, our secured vestibule and office have been finished completely. The new vestibule and practices are much safer, and students are adjusting to the new signing in and signing out of classroom policy. For sports, the high school hosted the state quarterfinals for football on Saturday. And we would also like to congratulate Elena Lee, who won states for golf and received recognition as this year's Miss Golf for Michigan. It's awesome. And Coach Dan Stoles received the Coach of the Year award for girls golf, so double win. Girls swim won the CAAC Blue Conference this year. That's all.
Any questions for our students? Yes, Trustee Buffett.
Thank you so much for your report. I did have a question. It was really helpful to hear the different supports that the high school has put into place to support students through the tragedies that our community has suffered. I'm just wondering, is there anything else that you would bring to the table if you were the adults in the situation, or are there any other supports that you can imagine being helpful to the Okemos High community?
This is a good question. Does anything come to mind for you?
I don't know. It helps that the counselors have definitely been around a lot, and it helps that I think it helps to really just stay close to friends right now and really show everyone that you appreciate them. Like for me, what this did for me is like, it just pushed me a lot closer to all the people around me. And like, I'm thinking about like everyone in my classrooms right now and just like, trying to show that I care for everyone. And it helped me a lot because like I reached out to a lot of friends reached out to me, and I've just been talking to like a lot of the people I've been close to lately. But yeah, at the school, I mean, you can tell everybody has been struggling a lot. And I mean, the teachers have been there for me. Other students have been there for me. I know the counselors would be there for me if I went up to them. And yeah, I mean, that makes me feel good about it. But
I was going to add, just support from all the teachers. I think that on the days in which we were given each piece of respective news, I didn't need an excuse to leave class to go see friends who needed me, to go do anything, and to a lot of students and teachers have just kept open lines of communication regarding, tests and things that were pre-planned. I think everyone at the high school kind of knows none of that matters too much. And just giving that flexibility. So there's nothing that I can specifically think that that the school could be doing better. But I do think that there's an open line of communication so that if there was something that the students needed, I think we all feel very comfortable going to teachers, counselors, and administration.
I would just like to keep that line of communication open from you to us also, and just if there's other things that come to mind later, please, as a board, we'd love to learn that as well.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Anyone else? We really appreciate you being here.
Thank you
Thank
for having
you.
us.
Thank you. Next up, we have our superintendent report and requests. I'll turn it over to Assistant Superintendent Daly.
Yes, thank you. So two small updates regarding the high school. One, Dr. Kemsley, high school principal, is working with his team on the future of Flex. So he is working with his building leadership teams to determine what might that look like, and you can anticipate we had hoped in December, but things, as you hear, we're going to be flexible. So it's going to be December or January when you'll hear a definitive feedback on what that's going to look like. Some good news, the bathrooms at the high school are scheduled to be completed at the end of January. So you might remember that was an unexpected leak, but we're going to have some beautiful new bathrooms. So I wanted to take a minute as we start this week of Thanksgiving to share some things that after the month we've had, some things that we can be thankful for as a district. So I have the Okemos Education Foundation. They had their annual OEF banquet this past week on Wednesday, and it's just a great opportunity to have our staff and educators recognized for their dedication and the hard work that they do each day. It's always a joyful occasion, and the OEF just plays such a huge role in supporting our students and our staff. So it was a nice event for everyone to come together at. Wanted to be thankful for us as a community learning together. We had our first presentation in the educational series for the Okemos community with sleep. So we had Luis O'Brien, a professor in the Division of Sleep Medicine at the University of Michigan, shared very helpful information on sleep, as well as some just really practical tips and strategies that parents can do or students can do to support that sleep within themselves. So we have that next presentation in the series will be January 28th. Wanted to give thanks to the athletic boosters. So they are doing a large fundraiser for the Okemos High School weight room renovation project. And so this project's going to benefit students for all different sports teams, as well as our strength and conditioning classes that occur during the school day as well. So just wanted to thank them for their ongoing support of our athletic programs. As the students mentioned in their report, I wanted to thank Steve Finnemore, who was a high school staff member and our 8th grade boys basketball coach, who passed away unexpectedly earlier this month. He embodied our Okemos values, and it was evident. I took one of the dogs there that afternoon. So they're handler could teach. I was there with Dr. Slee, and it was evident in all the stories that we heard from students and staff that he made everyone feel seen and valued and important. And so when we think about that overall goal as a district, that sense of belonging, he really did that for each of our students and staff. So thankful that we had the years with him, and of course, extend our condolences to his friends and family. Just a tragic loss for the community. And finally, I wanted to give my thanks and appreciation for you as board members, for the staff and the community for allowing me to step into this role as superintendent over the last month while Superintendent Hood has been out. I just appreciate all the support. It's been a great opportunity. And it's really been an honor to serve the community. So thank you.
Thank you.
I think we are thankful for you. Quite a month you've had stepping into this role. So you've done it with grace.
Thank you.
Really. Do we have any questions or anything for Assistant Superintendent Bailey? Yes, Trustee Kavanaugh.
Well, I was gonna mention for the board report, the sleep series. And so I'll just follow up since you started it.
Yeah.
Since you stole my thunder.
Sorry. And thankful for the trustees that were in attendance.
It was a great, Dr. O'Brien did a great job. I mean, I thought it was excellent. Unfortunately, we were not able to record it or to zoom it out since we were short-staffed. But we had the people who were in attendance asked good questions, but I thought it was great and I would love to have her. She has offered to come back if we want to have her come and speak. I thought she'd be great for our high school students to hear. I thought that she had a lot of, actionable, you can do stuff, My son's told me, forget it. He's not going to bed any earlier, but, I think there is something that some of our kids could do or our parents can do. And just to have the information of your kid isn't just being lazy. Because they don't want to get up, that their bodies really aren't letting them sleep. So I would love to have her back. Maybe that's something we can look for our high school students.
Can I just
Yes.
piggyback on that same topic? I thought your idea of having her come and speak to high school is an excellent one. I've already used some of her slides in the family meeting with my teenagers, and it is incredibly practical information. One thing I want to make sure we do next time is figure out some different communication strategies for letting people know. I know everyone got an email that's on the district email list, but I just want to kind of think creatively about how to get some more people there. But she was amazing.
She was great. And it was nice to hear. I mean, it's not necessarily all new information, but another person saying it in another way, just to make sure we keep driving the message home. And back to our start times discussion. That's what that was her end message too, without necessarily even knowing that we had done so much work on start times as a district.
Great. Okay, then moving on, we will go to board reports and requests. And I don't have any correspondence since our last meeting, but I will open it up to any board members who might have something they would like to report on or any requests they'd like to make. Yes, Trustee Buffett.
So since our last meeting, trustees Lynn Phelps and Interim Superintendent Bailey and I have met 3 times about the strategic planning process. One of those times was with Debbie Stair, who sent the proposal for facilitating the strategic planning process to us. And I think Superintendent Hood distributed that to all trustees. So people have that. We met before as a group before we met with Debbie, and that was to kind of frame some questions. Then we met with her and we met again this morning. And we would like to make that an action item at our next board meeting in December. To make the decision to whether to move forward or not with that proposal in the body. Anything to add?
No, I would hope that our fellow trustees have had, I said no, and then here I'm talking, right?
Do I look surprised?
Anyway. I would hope that our fellow trustees have digested the content of that proposal, and if there are any questions that you have now or have interest in any of the conversations that we had with Debbie Stair, I think it would be appropriate so that, you know, for us to dispose of those so that we're not waiting until our next meeting to have, you know, dialogue about this if you had any questions about it or concerns about the proposal.
Yeah, no, we had great discussions. I thought we hit, you know, everything we could think of. We made sure we asked Debbie. I think they have a good plan going forward. I think MASB is a really good choice to facilitate this. They understand our district. I think they understand working directly with school boards, and they can appreciate kind of our process in that. And I think the biggest thing with this is, you know, it takes a huge administrative load off of our staff. You know, I think the value for dollar there is enormous. And we're going to have a fantastic project at the end that'll be all encompassing of all the stakeholders in our district, which I think is going to be a really amazing thing, setting us right the right path going forward. So.
If I may add, because you reminded me of something, I do think that to your point, it does take a load from the administrative work associated. The model that MASB is promoting does take a considerable workload from the administrative team. And I think that although it does take a load, it also, our community may experience a difference in what we have been used to in terms of engagement with the process. I think that there are several opportunities for community input. And it just looks a little bit different than what our community has been used to. So I think that we have an opportunity to be agile and embrace the change in the opportunity that we have to receive this new model and embrace this new model. So I would encourage, if you haven't really digested the proposal, to digest it so that we can have substantive conversation and make a very informed decision for the board and for the community.
Just to underscore, the engagement is a difference in kind, not opportunity. So
That is true.
So just
That-
to- I know you
yes.
said that. I
Yes.
just want to make
Mhm.
sure that people know that there'll be surveys that every community member has a chance to fill out. There'll be focus groups. There will be a retreat planning committee, and that's work to be done. And you know, we didn't do any deciding there or anything, but just again, it's a different type of engagement, but there's definitely going to be opportunities for everyone to be engaged.
Great. Yes, trustee Phelps.
On another topic, as you all are aware, we have 2 board members who were elected in November, and they're starting in January. Trustee Kavanaugh and I have been working diligently on our onboarding process and how we can improve that and really kind of strengthen that going forward. So I actually just went out today to our new trustees, kind of our template, if you will, for kind of onboarding. The plan is to really make that a board member-driven process rather than an administrative-driven process. So we have an agenda that Trustee Kavanaugh and I are going to sit down and all these folks, the 2 new folks, and kind of go through everything, go through our policies and procedures, go through our board operating procedures that I know are not here yet, but they're well on their way. Kind of, you know, expectations. And I'm happy to send to everyone so they can kind of see. Along with that, we have a list of homework. So maybe probably 10 or 12 videos, MASB videos that are primers on various topics. So whether that's school finance or policies and procedures, roles of board members, kind of like as a pre-work prior to that. So this is going to be a work in progress. This is our first kind of swing at this, but I think it's much improved over what we had previously had. So we'll keep everyone in the loop, but I'm looking forward to that. So I don't know if I missed anything, Trustee Kavanaugh, on that.
No, I think it's a big step forward.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. We've been talking about that for years and
Yeah.
it's really nice.
Just thankful for the district that we kind of copied from at the MASB conference. We both went to a session though that was great. Like they gave everybody a framework of what you can do for your district, and that really helped us kind of.
Yeah, that framework was, very
Very
helpful.
helpful.
And we Okemized it, as
Yep.
we always do, because we can never, you know, leave anything alone. But
Yeah, we definitely toned it down too, or pulled back.
yeah,
So we
the district that we looked at, they provided a bus for the day to drive the new.
Loaded 'em all up.
All the schools. We thought that was over the top. So
wow.
this will be a self-guided drive around.
Pointing to.
There you go. Look and see.
Yeah, that's right. So, but yeah, I'll make sure I send kind of the videos and everything so everyone can see if you're interested. Because I do think it'd be helpful even for regular board members to kind of, oh yeah, maybe I should, get a quick, refresher on some topic. So hopefully it'll be good. So keep everyone in the loop how it goes.
Absolutely. Yes, trustee Taylor.
Trustee Kavanaugh and I had an advocacy committee conversation. As we know, legislature is in lame duck right now, but a lot of times things happen in lame duck. And we are going to be reaching out to our representatives to just schedule some meetings. We're not very hopeful that we'll schedule them before next year, but we can always try. And then the MASB just released kind of like their synopsis of lame duck and what to watch and where bills are at. And I haven't watched it yet, but I will. So at the next meeting, I'm hoping to bring an update just on what we think some of the initiatives are and to kind of like recap kind of what the MASB does for us, but for the community.
Great.
One other thing, just on the MASB front, let's see, they just sent out a survey to trustees around the state about setting some priorities for their work. And so we learned in ISOA that is the way that they figure out what they're going to focus on. So I just encourage everyone to respond to that because they collect that data and then figure out what they're going to focus on subsequent year.
That was an interesting list too. I don't know if anybody's had a chance. There were things that were like the complete opposite of each other that you could vote on. And I thought like, what district is supporting some of these things? So it was very interesting as you go through that list.
I say that a lot.
It was.
I would just want to comment on something that Assistant Superintendent Bailey touched on. And it's also in our yellow sheets. I just want to commend you for waiting a minute on introducing another data collection measure with that panoramic
The student survey.
the student survey, because the student voice is so important in what we do. And I really appreciate taking that moment, understanding that they're overwhelmed, understanding that we are at our limit and just letting them get through the holidays and allowing that to happen in January instead, so that it still informs our strategic plan. It still informs, what is going to happen next, but isn't being collected along with NWEA coming up and, people still trying to overcome grief and all the things that are going on. So just appreciating the human side of data, right? We have to understand that we need it, but timing is everything in so many ways. And I want to commend you for recognizing that because I think it's really important at this moment in time in our district that we pay attention to our timing and what we ask of everybody, including our students, especially our students. So just wanted to give you that little 2 cents. Is there anybody else who wanted to add anything else? We are running late on time, so I want to move through this next part. We are at the action items, and within the action items is our consent agenda. Is it the will of any board member to remove anything from the consent agenda? Seeing none, then I will ask for a motion, please, to approve that.
I move that the board approve items 1 and 2 for immediate implementation and appropriate action. Item 1, approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of November 11th, 2024. And item 2, approval of the minutes of the executive session meeting of November 11th, 2024.
Support.
Moved by trustee Kavanaugh, supported by trustee Lynn. All those in favor respond by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. And the motion passes. Up next, we have some other action items. First up is a donation acceptance. Can I have a motion, please?
I move the board accept the donation of new weight room equipment generously donated by the Okemos Athletic Boosters.
Support.
Moved by trustee Phelps, supported by trustee Taylor. And we heard about this earlier from Assistant Superintendent Bailey.
Yes, this is a new board policy, 3303. And so when we have a donation that exceeds a certain amount, we need a board action. So I would anticipate that you will see that with the continuous generous donations of our athletic boosters moving forward as well.
Great. All those in support respond by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. And the motion passes. Next up is the Kinawa remediation project that we were briefed on. Can I have a motion, please?
Really quick, just for clarification, I see this says funded by the Building and Site Sinking Fund in 2022 bond. Isn't it also general fund as well? we
Director
should
Lentz says
probably-
yes.
Okay.
Amend that,
We should
yes.
Make sure I'm happy to make the motion. I just want to make sure we're doing it correctly. I move that the board authorize the superintendent proceed with the Kinawa remediation projects funded by the general fund, the Building and Site Sinking Fund, and the 2022 bond in an amount not to exceed $1.5 million.
Moved by trustee Phelps, supported by trustee Doxy. Thank you for that correction. We will have that noted. This requires a roll call vote, please.
Trustee Buffett,
Yes.
trustee Kavanaugh,
Yes.
trustee Doxy,
Yes.
trustee Javara,
Yes,
trustee Lynn,
Yes.
trustee Taylor,
Yes.
I'm yes.
and the motion passes. Up next, we have the insulin litigation that we heard about at the last meeting. Can I have a motion, please?
I move that the board waive the reading and adopt the resolution authorizing and directing the superintendent to join the lawsuit and sign the attorney-client fee contract on behalf of Okemos Public Schools.
Support.
Moved by trustee Taylor, supported by trustee Kavanaugh. All those in favor respond by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay, and the motion passes. Okay, we did that pretty quickly. Good job. Next up, we have a few discussion items. First is the board operating procedures. I'll turn that over to trustee Phelps and Buffett.
Yeah, so and I'll let you add too. We met, I believe we met on this, didn't we? Or no, we sent an email around on this. We had a couple kind of minor changes that you put in yellow, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The only yellow in here is actually what I had brought up last time about kind of getting some agenda items to the executive
yeah.
committee. That's literally the only changes that haven't already been made. So yes, so that's what's there. So the amount of yellow in this text, which signified changes, is steadily decreased. That said, if there's any other feedback on these, I think we'd love to hear.
So one thing that trustee Doxy has a keen eye for detail noticed today that she brought to my attention, which I really appreciated. Trying to make sure I find the right spot here. All right, it's going to be on page 16. B under leadership and organization. 1-4. It says minutes and notes of committee meetings will be posted on board book. We thought it was better to say as appropriate, because sometimes there's not going to be situations where there's, minutes and notes. Yeah, or, there could be a bigger, as appropriate, those can be posted, but that may not happen every time. So that might be a better addition to that section. So I appreciate trustee Doxy for bringing that. That was a good catch. But that was the only change that I heard. I don't know if anyone else has any changes. Well. Or thoughts, discussion.
Yes. Sorry, trustee Doxy. I was so busy reading.
No, it's fine. And no, I know we talked about this previously, but I really want to thank trustee Buffett and Phelps for your time for pulling this together. I know it's a labor of love, but it will be very helpful as we move forward as a board and bringing new board members on to have our procedures in writing. And so, trustee Phelps just lifted up the one thing that was the only thing that, I noticed. So again, just thank you for your work.
Good job. Absolutely. We all echo that. Trustee Kavanaugh.
I'm scrolling through because it's been a little while since I read the whole thing, but do we have anything or do we want to include something about the new onboarding stuff we're talking about?
So part of the responsibility of the executive committee in here, I believe, does say onboarding.
Do we want to make a committee of onboarding or is that the executive committee that will be doing that?
As it is currently, that's the executive committee's responsibility. Going forward, certainly after, and I think maybe an idea, I mean, my just thought on that, we can talk about it. Maybe we kind of give it this round, I mean, and then kind of let that marinate, and maybe going forward, we think it makes more sense to have a committee, or maybe we think, oh, you know what, executive committee seemed to work best here. I can see both ways. The answer would be, I don't know, but I think executive committee might be a decent place to start.
Well, then you can take this first go round and tweak what needs to be tweaked if you think, and then add it. Then add it to this document.
This is, I mean, just to be clear, I can see this being a living document as we,
For
you know,
sure.
grow as a board, and, you know, there's gonna be stuff in here that I promise you we will change. Based on, you know, our lived experience together, so I think that's okay. We shouldn't be afraid to make changes as appropriate on this.
I do see one thing, but I don't know if we need to change. Page 20, at the beginning, at the first meeting of January in each calendar year, we'll hold an organizational meeting. We will, it has 1, elect board officers, and then 2, swear new trustees. That should be the opposite. Change that order. Is that putting them in an order?
No, that's a good point, because the first thing we would have to do would be swear in new trustees, because we wouldn't have a full board otherwise.
I don't know if that was in order, but
No, I think it's a good point for clarification. That's 20, right at the top of
Right at the
page
top.
20.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Does this document identify how we make changes to this document?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, no, that's a great point.
I mean, the governance.
Yeah, I
of it-
Yeah. That might be worth putting on. Yeah, we can talk. Yeah.
I
let's-
definitely think we should.
Yeah. no,
Yeah,
that's great.
and it was spurred when you said it's a living document, and I'm thinking,
Yeah, but how we do
right,
it, right?
exactly,
Yeah,
right.
No, that's a
Yeah.
great point.
Mhm.
What's your vision for that? How about that? Maybe.
Do I have a vision for that? I would think that if we are going to require that, you know, we have at least a meeting between the discussion and then the disposition of any change that we're making, that would be reasonable as opposed to you know, I don't see a need for 30 days or what.
Sure, yeah.
Right, but I don't know that I would suggest that we discuss the change and then vote on that at the same
Same
meeting.
meeting, yeah.
Yes. Mhm. I was just, because I didn't have a vision. That's just,
No, no,
yeah.
it's a great point. We had not, I mean. you know, Yeah. I guess I see us potentially just on a yearly basis looking at these. And then that was kind of my thought, it's just, you know, every year, kind of take a fresh look at them, you know what I mean? And I'm sure at the first time, there might be more than going forward, I'm sure we'll get into a good cadence there potentially, but I can see at least every year looking at them, just taking a fresh look and going in that direction. Where's the Johnson?
That's what I just thought. When
Yeah.
you said yearly, my thought was maybe this is a standing item at our board retreat.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
As trustee Lynn says.
I think that's a great idea. Okay,
Thank you for your great feedback.
Yeah, and I would say that too. I really appreciate all of you for taking a keen look at this, we put a lot of time in it, but we appreciate you all looking at it too, because you're extremely important. And it's really made it a much better document, so thank you to everyone.
And our hope is that this will be an action item at our next. at our
Yeah,
summer
so the
night
plan is that this will be an action item to
Good
adopt
job.
at our next meeting. in
Good
December.
job. Good job.
okay, wonderful. Next up is trustee Phelps again, taking the microphone for our book study.
Well, I don't intend to really take it too long.
All of your questions and thoughtful considerations.
I would just, hopefully it at least provides some basis for discussion. How about that? So we're on chapter 9, just so everyone knows where we're at, make sure we're getting the right spots here. The authentic leader. I have just a couple notes here. This chapter talks about leadership, obviously, right? Emphasizes the importance of authenticity in educational leadership. I think it's particular during times of change, right? Talks about the fact that authentic leaders align their actions with their core values, demonstrating integrity, transparency, and consistency. Authentic leaders, as it generally is, they build trust by being honest about challenges, of vulnerabilities, and connecting, especially emotionally, with their teams, all while maintaining focus on the collective vision. I think when you're talking about leadership and being an authentic leader, it also talks, and I think this is important. I thought this is, I don't know why this really sat with me, just the need for resilience and courage when being an authentic leader is really important. It's really good. It's really easy just to, spread sunshine, but sometimes, you have the courage to have those tough conversations as well. Because we're going to face resistance, we're going to face uncertainty, especially when we're losing commitment as we go through a change. So ultimately, authentic leaders, I have notes here, inspire trust, foster collaboration, and empower others by modeling the behaviors they wish to see and creating an environment of mutual respect and shared responsibility. Now, I have just a couple kind of 10 questions on here, and I tried to make them Okemos specific. Just to kind of
Great.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. But I don't know if anyone saw anything here and was like, oh, that speaks to me based on what I read today. So I will open it up to the crowd.
I thought you did a nice job of keeping them all the positive version, because immediately I went negative version of these interactions. So as you're spreading sunshine.
And there she is, folks.
And I thought, like, let's sing that at the board too.
Yeah, that's authentic. Authentic, trust Kavanaugh.
But you're right. These are the more interactions that we need to be searching, like striving for, and hopefully we see a lot of these, because I do see a lot of the positive interactions.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, don't wait for me. Go ahead.
Discussion.
One thing that this chapter brought up for me, and it seems like really great timing as we go into thinking about strategic planning, is this question about kind of what are the parts of we're all in the Okemos public school system. What are those parts of our system that are truly system-wide? And then how much latitude do schools have to kind of carve out their own vision for what good work looks like there? And I guess this chapter raised that because it speaks about how you can't kind of fake your passion for things, right? And so again, just the importance of really balancing that. And that's an active question as a board member, as I'm thinking about our work going forward.
And I'll just add along the lines of not faking, right? Like being authentic. One of the things it talked about in terms of the responsibility for innovation or change is like the time, like for you to get there, right? To your point, Trustee Buffett, like you can't fake it. And so as a leader, and you've got to be there to sell it. And then you've got to give your staff time to get there too. And you can't fake that. And so, that just stood out. I think most people know that, but just to like see it and have that reminder, like, yes. And again, just allowing that as a leader, allowing yourself time to get there if needed. And figure out how to get on board. I know we've had some conversations like this is where we're headed. You got to get on board. And so figuring out how to get there. So.
I think for me, one of the things that stood out was part of your number 3 with the connecting to the team. I think that that's something that Okemos does really well. I think it's something that I always have to keep in mind as a board member when we're making these big high-level decisions is that, I hear John's voice in my head saying, well, we have to do this the Okemos way. We do this with everyone, not to them. And I don't know if that's the case everywhere. And it really made me think about how, Okemos and the administrative team and, all of our leaders are so good at we're doing this together, right? It's in our mission statement. It's in what we do, it's in what we say, but it's actually practiced on so many levels through the district. And when we keep it in mind I think it helps make our perspective more realistic when we're saying, well, this has to be done in that together sense, not just we make a decision and you go with it, like start times is a perfect example for me. We've been trying for so long, right, to talk about it. We know the value, we know the research, but this has to be done the right way together so that everybody comes along, so that everybody's on board and feeling that we're making a decision as a whole, not as a board or as an administrative team. And we're doing this, tough process, whatever that might be, like start times together when it's right and when it fits. And I think that that's just a real strength in Okemos, and as much as that might not feel like it all the time, I think it's such an overreaching message that we have here. And I think a lot of people would agree that it's a real strength and it's something that I'm very proud of. I think we see that in all areas, and it's obviously going to impact our students in so many ways just because of that. So I really see that as a big strength.
I was looking at your number 10. Some of the, is it 10? But talking about one of the big changes, and the mascot is one that I think of, like, was handled so well that I thought John did such a great job of making that a community-wide discussion, bringing in students. And then in the end, that was a decision that was going to impact our students for the, more than anybody else. And I think that really having their voices in and helping them, they got to contribute to who our new mascot was and the design. And I was looking at our font even, and like that's the official mascot font.
Yeah, that's a product of the mascot
Right.
page. Yeah.
And just how, there was enough opposition, but to put the facts out there, this is what we know, this is how we're changing, and everybody has survived, like we've all made it through. And actually, an old article was sent to me in a Google alert that said the Okemos Chiefs. And I was like, what the heck? For some reason, it said like 2013 article, but it was like already at this point, this, like 2 years later, we're just so naturally the Wolves. But I thought that was an excellent example of how leading with a difficult, change, and how well we came through that, and that it was for the students. So that's who we should be working for.
With your questions, number 7, learning from mistakes in Okemos. And I may even have been a little critical in our last meeting of John. But I think that is something that he actually, the feedback and learning and reflection, not just in mistakes, but just in general. And then particularly from mistakes. I see that that's something that, our leader does all the time and very well. And the one heading of philosophy, vision, and strategy, I feel like that is also something that John is really, he lives that. He's always talking about what is the why, and what is the, how are we going to get there? What is the vision, and why are we doing it? And what is our strategy behind it? And I feel like in everything we do, that's at the core. Whenever he brings any big ideas, or it's always rooted in philosophy, vision, and strategy. And so this book has been, it was coming, I was asking those questions in chapter 8. And the other thing that I wonder that I had in this is just making sure that I don't know how it works from, like, if this is a PD thing, but just how we're building our leadership capacity within our leaders in our district. I know I can speak to John as a leader because I interact with him so often, right? And I know that this was a book study for a lot of our administrators. But just, it wasn't, I wonder, like, this is great. How are we building this capacity, and what kind of professional development, and what are we doing to support our team to become leaders, authentic leaders? Doesn't need an answer. It was just an I wonder.
On number, oh, would you
Go ahead.
Are you sure? Yeah. Okay. On number 7, I was going to speak to, I'm going to term it, applying our learnings. So you all, I'm going to share that during the course of the conversations on evaluating the model that MASB is presenting to us for implementation of the strategic plan. Your fellow board members were very intentional to apply learnings that we've had from perhaps I'll call it challenging engagements that we've afforded our community to be able to take part in. And I'll note one of the bond, the outcomes from the bond engagement with the community and engagement with the bond committee. We had a little bit of, it wasn't as smooth as we wanted it. We may have wanted it, but we were intentional to have that discussion and modify some of the opportunities that the community will have to have for transparency and being able to come along with, although it won't be the same kind of community engagement, we are trying to apply the learnings from that situation so that this will be an easier process in terms of understanding the flow of the decision-making and how we got to where we are or where we will be, I guess. So I was really proud of being able, when I read through your very good questions too, you prompted really good thought with these questions. But number 7, during the course of even our conversation earlier today, I saw that modeled. I mean, we leaned into each other so that we could get that right. So I think that demonstrating a learning characteristic is a good thing. And we definitely lived that.
I appreciate that. I agree.
Yeah.
That's a great takeaway from that.
I'll just say, ditto to what Trustee Lynn just said, because that's where my thought was going, was number 7. And some of the processes that we've gone through with our bond work and hearing from our community, but we took those lessons and we heard from our community members and we had to make some pivots along the way, but that's true leadership to be able to do that, right? And so, again, Trustee Lynn said it way better than I did, but I was there with you.
There we go.
Yeah.
One more thing. I like the little profiles of different types of effective leaders. And again, I just think it speaks to this question about people need to be authentic to be effective. Big idea. And that people come differently. And so then, when we talk about strategic planning, our values, that knowing that, I think of Venn diagrams, right? Each person in our system is a circle. Yeah, there's some overlap, right? And that's the we and that's the us, and those are our values. But then there's some parts that don't overlap. And then how do we support our leaders in our district in ways that kind of honor who they are and different ideas about it while still being a consistent approach? I just think it's an awesome question. When I served as principal, my perspective was that our district just didn't kind of do that. It was never clear kind of what was central and what school-based. I mean, it was kind of found out as you went along. So one of my hopes again for our process is that we're just lift that up and communicate that clearly to all of our stakeholders about what's the intentional bandwidth of variability support so people can be authentic.
Great.
Good discussion. Thank you, everyone.
Good question. Very good.
Yes, thank you for those questions.
Who's next?
Yeah, who has it for next month? I know there was a list.
That's in there
It's
somewhere.
on the yellow sheets.
We got it. I think it's
I think it's trustee Doxy too.
Yeah, there's a gap before. No, I thought you were doing the rest of the book.
Sorry.
No, ma'am. You're interesting. Incorrect.
This might be the
Chapter
last
10,
chance.
it's
Yeah,
It's
that'll be my
open.
last
It's
meeting.
open.
Not-
Melanie.
Yeah, that'll be my last meeting. don't think it.
You are.
I might be emotional. You all never know. You don't want me doing
How many years, Melanie? I forget every time. 12 years, 14 years?
14.
Oh,
14.
14. I'm saying 11. Sorry.
What?
I said.
He shortchanged you 3
3
years.
years.
Is that a record? Do we know?
Ron Stoika was 20, I think.
Oh, well then, 6 more, come on.
You're right up there.
The election was in
I know.
November.
You'll have to come back though.
She's
it
gonna
time
keep
to adjourn?
I'm trying. I'm really trying. We just need somebody for next month.
I think I have one.
Would
for
everyone
next month,
sign
but it's
up?
not
Well,
the
I mean, I can
next.
do it again. I want to be able to do it. I'd be happy.
How about we just all come up with one question?
There we go.
There you
That's
go.
really innovative. Yeah, leadership, Katie.
Katie,
Don't
that's
just make snarky
fantastic.
remarks.
That wasn't
I
snarky.
know, you're
loved
saying
it.
that.
I think that was a great idea.
Oh,
I'm saying I'm a butt. I do more than just snarky remarks. Sometimes.
No, I love that idea.
Great
It'll be
idea,
after
Katie.
9.
It is definitely after 9. Okay, so everyone will submit one question and then we'll just have a combined effort. That sounds great. Good job. I love that. And then now we are at our second opportunity for public comment tonight. We do not have any blue cards. Do we have anyone online? We do not. Okay, and then there are no other batters. So at 9:29 PM, we are adjourned.
Liz is running.
Be careful.
Oh.